Welcome to episode 2 of Communication and Conflict Resolution. I am excited to continue our conversation about conversations and conflict. So let's dive in. So again, my name is Jessica Fern. I'm your Director of Training at FPI Management, and I'm excited to dive into really thinking about how to have healthy communication and conflict in our working relationships and at our offices and at our properties. So know that conflict can happen at any time. Whether or not you're prepared, conflict does not care whether or not you're prepared. So learning how to navigate and manage both types of conflict is going to be a great tool in helping you navigate conflict resolution to make it healthy and make it productive. So recognize that people's feelings are legitimate. So anytime we've got someone who's coming in, they're upset, the first thing that we need to do is just take a breath and listen. And whether or not you agree or disagree with their perspective, our goal is, again, to create understanding. You may not agree, but again, the goal is all of the understanding. So here are our conflict resolution steps, and we're going to break these down one by one. But step 1 is to identify the source of the conflict. Why did it happen in the first place? Why is there a disagreement? Why is an individual upset? Look beyond the incident. Step 2 is going to be establish common goals. And then have the conversation. So you do have to talk about conflict in order to move through it. And there is a specific way that we should do it in order for it to be healthy and productive. And then we're going to develop an agreement that works for all. It's one thing to have a conversation about conflict, but it's an even different conversation when you and I can agree on these are our action items and these are our steps to move through this conflict together. So let's figure out where the conflict came from. So remember that anytime that conflict is present, it's because you and I both care about something. And when we're looking at context and content, so what is it about and are there emotions involved? The higher the stakes, the higher the conflict is going to be, and most likely the higher emotions you're going to be dealing with are. So you need to be very sensitive when we are establishing the heat of the issue. So if you care about something a lot, you're going to get more fired up about it. I need to be really sensitive when I'm speaking with you about that because it's obviously something that you care about. It's not going to make sense for me to start fighting fire with fire just because. If you care about something more than I do, it is perfectly acceptable to let you have the win. And in fact, if that gets you and I to an agreement faster, that is a win for everybody because it helps us work towards the common goal. So in order for both people to really identify where the problem came from and how we move through, each party needs to talk about their side of the story. And hopefully through those two stories, you and I are going to create understanding on what the problem is, and then the goal is to agree on the problem. Not agree on emotions, not agree who's right or wrong. We want to agree that this problem exists. So in order for you to get a clear perspective on where someone is coming from, let's ask some questions. Can you explain to me more about the issue? What I'm hearing is that you're upset about this. Am I on the right track? I'm not sure I understand exactly what you mean. Can you spend a little bit more time talking to me about this issue? Or walk me through how you feel about it. What I'm doing is I'm asking questions to clarify exactly where you're coming from. Otherwise, if I'm trying to make assumptions on the issue, from my perspective, it might not solve the real problem. Have you ever continued to solve a problem, but the problem kept coming back? Well, that's because you've solved the wrong thing. That is the number one key indicator that you're solving the wrong problem, is that it keeps coming back. So let's ask questions until we are fiercely clear on what the problem is. We'll agree on it, then you and I know what the end result is that we need to work together on. So that's the source. I want to talk about accountability really quick. Our role in conflict. I know that it's hard to admit that we're wrong, but sometimes owning your mistakes and avoiding blaming is a huge way to make some progress by admitting, you know what, I apologize for the way that I just spoke to you right there. Or I'm sorry, I totally took that out of context. Or yeah, you know what, I should have followed up with you. Instead of, well, you, well, you, well, you. Taking accountability and using I statements not only shows people that you're human, but it shows people that they can trust you because you're not above taking accountability and your part in the conflict. Try to have a conflict with someone when they're apologizing to you. It's impossible, right? Like, how are you going to get mad at someone who's totally owning their side of the story? So own up to your mistakes, right? Admit, this is what I did in this situation that I could have done differently. Avoid blaming. Well, I did this because of this. Remember, nobody makes you do anything. You are totally responsible for your own actions and reactions, whether that's positive or whether that's negative. We always have a choice with how we allow what impacts us to impact us and affect us. So if somebody is choosing to be upset or negative with me and I choose to be upset and negative with them, they didn't make me do that. That was my choice. So we want to own our own part in each conflict and conversation. Apologize and be honest. Like, yeah, you know what? I'm sorry. I totally jumped to conclusions. I didn't mean to do that. Can we start over? You know what I love to do? I love to ask for a reset. And there's something beautiful about asking for a reset in a conversation that allows me to apologize and it allows you an implied sense of forgiveness when you grant me the reset. Like, you know what? Can we just reset really quick? I'm sorry, I was not listening or I took what you just said out of context. Will you allow me a reset? And when you say yes, you've forgiven me for my behavior and you and I get to move into this conversation with a clean slate. Sometimes we can reset for 5 minutes from now or maybe tomorrow. But there's a very beautiful thing about asking for a reset in the middle of a conflict or conversation in order to restore safety, in order for you and I to be productive about that conversation. Okay, so we're going to establish common goals. So we know that the conflict exists. We know that we need to own our part. Now we need to figure out how you and I move past it together. And that's important because, again, you can't people solve, only problem solve. If I go into conflict and try to solve you or try to make you agree with me, we're not going to make any progress together. I want to understand what the problem is so you and I can now collaborate. We're a team in this. So let's agree on the desired outcome, even if we don't agree on the problem. So, okay, going back to our work order example from episode 1. If I want work orders done in building 1 and you want them done on building 2, I can pause and say, can we agree that we both want work orders done? Like, let's just agree right there before we move forward. Then let's collaborate. So walk me through why it's important for you to get them done in building 2. And then when you're done, I'll walk you through why it's important for me to get them done in building 1. Can we agree on that? And that allows each party to now talk about how we feel. Then we're going to find common ground. So while you're speaking or this individual is speaking, I'm going to start looking for things that I agree with or that I can understand. Then I'm going to relate what I have to say back to what I already understand about what you have to say, and you and I are going to work toward a solution together. Now keep in mind, in order for this to be productive, there has to be a certain level of humility. There's got to be things that I'm going to be willing to give up, like my say, or my perspective, or the fact that I'm the supervisor and you're my employee and it's not going to be my way, because it's not my way or the highway. So I have to be humble, I have to exercise humility, and I have to keep in mind what is going to get us to the end result faster. Because is my lack of humility going to serve my residents the best? No, it's not. My lack of humility is going to make it a little bit more tense, and it's going to make the work orders become even more delayed. If I exercise humility, my work orders get done faster. Everybody is happy, and I can find common ground with my employee and continue to build trust. All right, so now we have to talk. So Remember when you were a kid and you were playing a game of tag and everyone was running around like crazy people, and when you're it, like you are just trying to go get people and you're trying to tag them as fast as you can, and then you tag somebody else and they're it, and I have all this anxiety when I'm trying not to get tagged until I find home base. And that sense of relief when you're like, oh, base, right? You get to breathe a little bit. It is a neutral, comfortable environment that allows you to take a breath. You should all have a home base in your office, in your shop, in wherever it is that you're working, that is a neutral zone for you to have productive, constructive conversations. So I encourage you to think about your own offices right now and where could be a great home base. You might also start with, where do we not want to have tense conversations? Like, I highly recommend that you do not have tense conversations in a manager's office where it is me sitting across from you at a desk. It creates a certain level of supervisor subordinate authority that allows people to maybe not speak their mind or maybe not be as open as you would like them to be. And in order for us to move through conflict, we need to be able to talk freely and respectfully towards each other. So maybe we say we're not going to have tense conversations in the office. We're going to go for a walk. We're going to go to the coffee shop. We're going to go grab lunch together, and this is where we're going to talk. It's going to be neutral. And even body language can make a big difference. If I come sit next to you versus across from you, it creates a more neutral zone for us to have a productive conversation. So pay attention to your environment and your body language and even how you're speaking. Maybe you're a little bit more soft. Maybe you are taking notes. So all of those things can really be conducive to a productive environment for you to actually have a conversation that's going to help you progress through the issue and not build walls. That's what we're trying to do. Break the walls down, make people feel safe enough to have these productive conversations. All right, active listening. So I'm not a huge fan of beating active listening to death because I'm sure that you've heard lots of different things on active listening. I feel like the biggest thing though when we are active listening and to get in the zone to actively listen is to care what the speaker is saying. When I am caring about what you're saying, it's a lot easier for me to do some of these items like make eye contact, take notes, ask questions, give you all of my time. If you're busy, don't attempt to engage in a conversation because if your employee comes in and they're like, hey, Jessica, I really need to talk to you about something. It's super important. I'm like, yep, sure, sounds good. I'm not giving you my full attention. And that doesn't make what's important to you important to me. And what's important to you has to be important to me. You're my teammate at the end of the day. So it is perfectly acceptable for me to table a conversation until I can give you my full attention. Like, you know what? I'm right in the middle of this report. I need to give it my full attention for another 30 minutes. Are you able to come back at 3 o'clock so you and I can chat? Yeah, no problem. Then I can prepare to have that conversation with you. So if you're not in a situation to actively listen, put yourself in that situation or schedule time when you are. We also don't want to rush through conversations because that doesn't make people feel important either. And sometimes when we're feeling rushed, we tend to be less patient. I'm way less patient when I have less time because I'm worried about what time it is, what I have left to do, my next appointment that's coming in, and it removes opportunities for me to give you my full attention. When we are in that zone, take notes, give them your full attention, remove distractions, put your phone on silent, shut your email off, remain neutral, and don't interrupt. Let folks really vet out what it is that they're trying to say before you continue to talk. Sometimes people just want to vent. Have you ever done that? Have you ever had a conversation with someone and they're coming in and they're venting and you're giving them all your best advice, but they don't want to take it and you're like, well, why are you talking to me? You know, some people just want to talk, and that might create unnecessary conflict if we're trying to give advice, but someone just wants to vent. I'll do that. I will clarify my position as a listener with you before we even have the conversation. I will ask, do you want advice or do you want to vent? If you want advice, I know what role I'm taking. I'm taking notes. I'm going to get ready to give you advice. I'm going to get ready to give you feedback when you're all done. But if you just want to vent, I don't have to get upset about why you're not taking all of my great ideas, because my role is simply to listen. So it's okay as well to clarify, how would you like me to participate in this conversation with you? Because sometimes, again, just miscommunication on my role in this conversation, that could create unnecessary conflict right there. So clarify your position before you go in as well, and that's going to be very, very helpful. Active speaking. So I love to talk about active speaking because we are responsible for our verbal contributions into a conversation. I'm responsible for my tone, the words that I use, and how I choose to use them. They're very impactful and I can't take them back. So it's really important that I think about how I want to say and what I want to say, even if that means I need a minute. And I love to be transparent in conversations, like, I need a minute. Like, will you allow me a minute just to kind of think about what I want to say? Or allow me to talk to you with unfinished thoughts. So that way I'm clarifying where I'm coming from, not leaving any room for misinterpretation. It allows the individual that I'm communicating with to be very clear on my perspective. So we want to avoid absolutes when we are talking to people. Nobody always or nobody nevers. My favorite is, you never email me back, but I'm literally emailing you right now. There's no such a thing as an always or a never. Avoid storytelling. We want to avoid painting people out to be a bad guy. So that avoids us from taking accountability as well. If I make everything else your fault, then I can't take accountability. And I end up being in the victim seat or the back seat because it's not my fault. And it's so much easier to solve issues when you're in the driver's seat. I don't want to put, my end result or my production on somebody else's shoulders. I like to stay in control of that. And with conversations and conflict, if we're experiencing a problem, it's so much easier for me to solve my part than it is to make you solve yours. So we don't want to paint other people out to be victims or villains or make us out to be helpless. We want to be honest and raw and own our own part in each communication, conversation, and conflict. Assume best intentions. This one's really hard, especially when we cannot separate the person from the problem. Have you ever been mad at a friend and then all of a sudden the way that they breathe bothers you? Like, look at her walking in, the way she's breathing. Or look at that resident coming in. And you have folks in your life like that. No matter what they say, it's annoying because you think that they are annoying. Remember, you can't people solve. You can only problem solve. I've tried to people solve and I've been extremely unsuccessful. It cannot be done. You know what I can do though is I can me solve. I am able to me solve. I can change the way that I respond to situations, how I react to situations, how I contribute into conversations. That's what I can control, not other people, but I am responsible for me. We also want to use I statements like, I feel really frustrated when you don't listen to me, instead of, you make me so mad because you never listen. That's not going to allow an individual an example of specific behavior that has the ability to even be changed. Because number one, nobody always and nobody nevers, but I need to be able to show you and tell you how your behavior is affecting me in order for you and I to work on change together. Also, share your feelings. It creates vulnerability and trust, especially if you are working with maybe one of your employees. Humanizing yourself as a supervisor is extremely impactful. Like, I totally understand where you're coming from. I've made that mistake before and can identify with how you feel. Your employee is going to be like, wow, really? You're not perfect? No, I'm not. And it's okay to not be perfect. We don't expect that. And it humanizes you and creates a level of trust between you and the individual that you're speaking with in order for you to move forward and have productive conversations. Just because you're done explaining doesn't mean the other party is done understanding. One of my favorite things to say, and we do this a lot when we're communicating. Got that? Okay, cool. Are you good? Questions? Excellent. Go get it done. But we haven't confirmed understanding. It is not about the way I speak. It's about how you understand. Because if I'm not speaking clearly and you're not understanding, it does not matter what it is that I say. Because the goal of me speaking is for you to understand. And I need to speak in a way that you understand. How do I figure out how you understand best? Well, I can ask you. Do you like to be followed up with in writing? Do you want me to send you an email? Do you want me to check in with you? What type of accountability do I need to put in place for you to confirm you continue to stay on the right track? So that is an easy one. And instead of, how do I work with you best? How do you understand best? This is such a great question to ask anyone you work with, so you know when you're speaking that it makes a difference. Now, not everybody knows to ask you that question, so you can take it upon yourself to tell other people how you understand best. Me personally, I like, if I'm going to have a conversation with you on the phone, I like to have something to reference. So let's recap in an email. That is how I understand best. And so I'll let people know, can we recap this? Can you shoot me an email and remind me? That way I've got something to reference. And that's my responsibility, is to additionally communicate how I understand best. But to confirm understanding is going to clear up so much unnecessary conflict, because you've already confirmed that you're on the same page and everybody understands. Okay, now we got to have the conversation. We know why conflict exists, that it's emotional. We're emotional problem solving. We've found a place to have the conversation. We've given everybody the benefit of the doubt. We've explained where we're coming from. Now we have the conversation. So schedule enough time to actually talk, and then clarify perceptions. I can't solve a problem that I'm not clear is a problem. So I need to have a perfect understanding of the actual issue before I can attempt it, because remember, the problem will continue to happen if I've solved the wrong one. Focus. Keep the main thing the main thing. There's nothing more frustrating than talking about one issue and 18 others get brought into it. Like, I need to talk to you about you showing up late to work. Well, that was all great, but you didn't answer the phone yesterday. Like, let's keep the main thing the main thing. If issues do come up or they do arise or are brought into the conversation, make a note of them and then schedule a different time to talk about those specific issues. Otherwise, you end up in the cycle of conflict and it's really hard to get out. So keep the main thing, and focus on the problem that you've agreed upon. That's why that tip is really important to do in the beginning. Agree on the problem that needs to be solved so you can avoid a bunch of other stuff being brought in and convoluting your situation. Listen. Respond instead of react. Pay attention to triggers. You know that really warm feeling when your blood starts to boil? Take a breath. It's okay. Even if you need to table a conversation or make a note or get up and walk around, that's totally fine. Whatever keeps you engaged and focused in that conversation. Know that what other people say is a reflection of them and not you. Sometimes maybe you're a community manager or you're a portfolio manager and someone's coming in and they're like, you never do this and you're the worst and you never follow up. You're the worst supervisor ever. Only you know whether or not that's true. And you get to decide whether or not you let that affect you. If you feel like there's some truth behind that, be honest. Am I really the world's worst supervisor? Or can I recognize that this individual is upset? And what I can do is understand that they're upset. And what I can do is give them some grace because they're upset and not take this personally. Remember, you decide what you let in, and what other people say is a reflection of you, a reflection of them, not you. So we get to manage what we allow in and what we don't. And that's going to allow you to further manage your triggers because you get to decide what you want to do with that information. Then we agree, we confirm the issue, and then we're going to develop an agreement to move forward. All right, nonverbal cues. So pay attention to your body language, your eye contact, rolling your eyes, what you're doing with your hands. The words that you say are less impactful than how your words make people feel. And your words become expressive with your body language. So I could say, wow, great job on that report, or wow, great job on that report. My words were exactly the same, but the way that I made you feel, the way that I expressed those words became completely different once I threw in my nonverbal cues. So if you're a serial eye roller, or you like to, tap your fingers or make people feel like you're being impatient, pay attention to those things about yourself and work on, really subduing those during the conversation, because we don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. What that can then do is make them feel unsafe, walls go up, conversations become unproductive. All right, de-escalation. We've all been in conversations that escalated really quickly, and we need to walk them back down. So distance people from the issue at hand. Speak in theoretical terms, such as, what's the theory behind completing the task this way? Or walk me through your perspective. I'm really interested in hearing more. I hear that you're really passionate about that. That's really clear. What I don't understand, though, is what you mean, and all I'm asking you to do is clarify a little bit more. So you can clarify your intent and your perception and allow them an opportunity to speak more. Use they to explore an idea instead of you. You can sound really finger pointy, really blaming if we say, well, industry standard is actually this, or they say that doing tasks this way is more efficient, but I'm open to anything. Let's hear your perspective. That's a great way to, again, avoid that blaming. And brainstorm. Anytime you feel like I can join in with you, that's going to make you feel like you and I can collaborate together. Like, I hear that you're really passionate about this topic, and I am too. Why don't we agree on what the issue is so you and I can work together to move through the issue? Identify what emotions your speaker might be feeling when you're in the heat of a moment. So if you feel clear as day that your speaker is frustrated, and you choose to use that same emotion, where do you think you're going to get? Up the stairs or down the stairs? Y'all, we are going to the top flight. You cannot fight fire with fire. But if you're getting fired up and I choose to be calm, that's going to create an entirely different tone for you. Try it. I guarantee it's going to de-escalate a situation faster than anything else, is that you choosing the opposite, more calm tone or expression than your speaker. And again, exercise that humility. Be a little humble. Give them the opportunity to feel what they feel. It doesn't discount your feelings. You're just allowing the person who obviously is very fired up about this to vet out their feelings so you can be productive. At the end of the day, if you don't get to express your feelings, but you can agree on a problem and you can solve it, that's the win. That is the win. Not your emotions being heard louder than somebody else's, not getting somebody else to agree with you. Those are not the wins. You collaborating with your team and moving through conflict, that is the win at the end of the day. So whatever we need to do to get there, that's your end game. Ask, I never thought about it this way. Can you tell me a little bit more? That's a great way to allow people an opportunity to continue speaking about their perspective or feelings. Take a break. Don't be afraid to table an unproductive conversation. I've called that out too. Like, you know what? This isn't going anywhere right now. It sounds like we both need a break. Can you agree that we should probably meet tomorrow morning on this, or is there a time that works better for you? Couple other de-escalation tips. My favorite is use humor. Like, you cannot resist a good joke. My favorite is what they call dad jokes, and I like to tell cow jokes. I'm going to tell you a cow joke before I tell you the other ones, because you can't be mad after you tell this joke. What do you call a cow with no legs? Ground beef. Isn't that amazing? What do you call a cow with 3 legs? Lean beef. Okay, one more. What do you call an angry cow? Beef jerky. Try telling those the next time you're in a heated conversation and see how mad people stay. You can't get mad at the cow joke. Identify common ground and consider who else might be involved. Have you ever had a heated conversation but neither one of you were the decision maker? So really you are spending time spinning your wheels about what somebody else might think. Why not invite that decision maker or stakeholder into the conversation? That way you don't have to spin your wheels about it. And remember, at the end of the day, a positive, productive attitude is going to solve more problems than a negative attitude ever will. So sometimes we just need to maybe do an internal reset and come back into the conversation a little bit more positive and a little bit more productive. Remember, you can't people solve, but you can me solve, and I'll need to own my own attitude in that conversation to be productive. All right, finding a solution. So we're collaborating, which means co-labor. This means you and I are working together to find a solution. You can do this many different ways. I have sat down with an individual that I may be having a conflict with and written down all the different ways we are wrong and all the different ways that we are right. And from those two lists, have found, okay, what do you agree with and what do you don't? So I'm going to give you my paper, you give me yours, and we're going to circle things we do and don't agree with. And when we have matching circles, that's a great way to start finding solutions. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to work together and find as many solutions as possible. If I have to write down, let's say that my issue is that there's a light bulb out. Let's write down as many different possible solutions as we can on how to fix that, then we'll agree on the one that works best. But having more than one solution also shows that not one individual has to be right. It gets our brains flowing, we're brainstorming, and this is how we think outside of the box, is when we consider all of the different opportunities to problem solve, not one opportunity, or wait for somebody else to come up with the answer. We want to take a look at all of the different possible solutions so we can pick the best possible one. Take one concern at a time, especially if you're dealing with a different layer or layered issues. Maybe you can agree on the one that's the most pressing or one that's the most urgent. So perhaps you have a conflict in schedule and you've got a turn that needs to be done and a work order that needs to be done. Well, is the work order an emergency? Do you have a move-in happening that day? Which one's more urgent? Agree on which one you want to solve first and then work towards that one. When that one's done, then you can pick up the other. So that's a really great strategic way to figure out which solution and which problem we need to work on first. Write those ideas down. Defer judgments. When I'm problem solving, I always create the environment. It's like Vegas. What happens in the room stays in the room. There are no dumb ideas. There are no stupid ideas. I'm not going to say, oh, that's not going to work, because how do I know? Let's defer the judgments until we've written everything down. Sometimes one idea that might not work could lead into a beautiful idea that does work, and you never would have gotten there had you dismissed the first. So let's write everything down before we decide that something's not going to work, and let the ideas start flowing. This is where innovation comes from. All right, let's agree. After reaching an agreement, summarize the ideas and put them in writing. We're going to restate them back to the other person, and we have to make sure that everybody agrees and that we're on the same page in what we're going to do to move forward. Always leave the conversation with a commitment to implement the plan. I love to recap with action items. So here's what I'm going to do, here's what you're going to do, and here's when we're going to reconvene. That way everybody's clear. I've definitely walked away from conversations like, did we actually agree on anything? Or, you know, I'm unclear on actually who is going to do what. So we can put it in writing and agree, so that way when we do reconvene and we do follow up, everybody knows what their responsibilities are. Don't forget to follow up and do what you said you were going to do. This creates trust and reliability. Just doing what you say you're going to do allows people to have faith in your word. And once your word is questioned, it's really hard to get that back. So if you are unable to perform, or maybe you get into something or you get pulled away, communicate with the other party that you gave your commitment to and let them know. Like, hey, can I get another day? Or, you know, when we first talked about this solution, I thought I could do this, but I'm experiencing this roadblock or barrier. Is it okay if we revisit this conversation? Can we revisit the solution that we identified? I'm having a hard time with this. Again, people do really well when they know what to expect. That's way better than you dropping the ball or not saying anything. It continues that collaborative partnership in working towards common goals and solutions. Mediations. So sometimes you need to bring in an unbiased third party when maybe the two of you can't agree. I mean, I know all of this sounds good in theory, but there are just some people that you're not going to be able to have conflict conversations with and work towards that solution. Some people don't care what you have to say. They don't want to listen to you. They don't want to give you the benefit of the doubt. And sometimes it is smart to bring somebody in. Maybe if you've got a personality conflict with someone, you've tried, you've been unsuccessful. Anytime anyone has ever threatened you with harassment or discrimination, those are really great moments to bring in a mediator or an unbiased third party who can help you navigate that conversation. We definitely recommend that it is an unbiased, neutral third party. If it's me and my leasing agent and I bring my assistant manager in on my side, that sounds like a gang up, not an unbiased, neutral third party. So be careful with who you're selecting, and it should be someone who is skilled at mediation who can help you navigate through these difficult conversations. So when we are in the middle of mediation, always let the mediator know from both sides of the board what the issues are, so they know going into the situation what everybody's issues are. So I'm going to explain it from my side. I'm going to let them know to the best of my ability your side. Maybe I'd like to give you the opportunity to tell that individual your side of the story too. Double check that the information that you've been given is accurate. We sometimes run up against 3 types of stories that can interfere with our ability to really gather facts and land on what the problem actually is. The first one would be a report. It's something that we have seen, heard, or felt. And a great way to navigate through those stories is to ask, is this known to be true? Or is it an assumption? Sometimes we might say, let's say the issue was that the golf cart got broken into. Well, you can't break into a golf cart, but maybe the golf cart didn't get put away and the battery was left drained. And now I've come in the morning and I need to take it on tour and it's not working because it didn't get plugged in. And I'm telling you that, well, so-and-so is responsible for putting that golf cart away, so it's their fault. Well, is this known to be true? Like, do we know for sure that it was this individual's responsibility, or is it a report based on past events or things that we think are true? The next type of story is an inference. It's a statement that we think is true based on past experiences. So, in other words, it's an assumption. So-and-so always puts the golf cart away, so it's obviously their fault because they didn't do it correctly. And then the last one is a judgment. It's a conclusion based on past events that are previously observed. So if we've always done it this way, we could reasonably expect the behavior to continue. And in any single one of those scenarios, we don't have the facts. Sometimes they're feelings and not a fact. So we need to get down to who is the last person to leave. Did somebody have a conversation about who was supposed to put the golf cart away before we decided whose responsibility it was? So that's a really big tip in navigating through some of these difficult conversations, is really keeping the main thing, not majoring in minors. What are the facts of the situation? Once conflict is clear, then we can attempt to solve the problem based on both parties' perspectives. So that's what your mediator is going to come in and do if you're unsuccessful in handling the conflict by yourself. And it's okay to invite somebody in. You're not going to be able to solve problems with everybody. You're not perfect. That's why you have a team. That's why you can ask for help. You can raise your hand and ask maybe to tag in your supervisor or your human resources department. You've got lots of different resources out there to have productive conversations. Don't take it personally if you're not making progress with another individual. You might just need simply a fresh perspective. Okay, so let's talk about a couple different case studies and how to manage and navigate conflict. So I'll read this case study to you and then we'll talk about how to handle it. So you've got a particular resident or customer that has called the office to complain about a lack of services, whether that's an incomplete work order or a product given that didn't meet expectations. This person threatens to never do business with you again, and additionally is going to write their opinion all over Yelp or apartmentratings.com. You're upset because you stand by your work and are offended that it was questioned. After all, you weren't even given a chance to find out what happened or explain. How do we solve the conflict? What would be the first thing that we do? Know your audience. This is a customer that you're dealing with. It's not an employee. It's not a teammate. Their business is at risk. My recommendation is to first apologize. Remember that accountability piece we talked about? This is a great time to exercise that. I'm so sorry that you feel like what your level of service didn't meet your expectations. Can you talk me through what happened? So let me get a good understanding of what the problem actually was. Not, oh, heck no, you're not going to talk about my team that way. We want to really gain an understanding from their perspective on what happened. So walk me through what didn't meet your expectations. Walk me through what didn't happen. How did you feel when this happened? I'm going to gather all the information until you and I can agree on the problem. So is the problem that your product or service didn't get done to your level of standard or when you thought it was going to happen? Let's say the problem is that a resident was promised that their work order was going to be done between 2 and 3 p.m. and nobody ever showed up. And the resident has called and they're really upset. I can apologize first and say, well, walk me through what the problem is. Well, someone said they were going to come do my work order between 2 and 3 and nobody ever showed up. I've got a couple choices on how I can respond. Well, there was an emergency and I'm so sorry we didn't, come to do your work order on time, but, building 18 decided to explode and that was a bigger priority. That, although it's an explanation, does that solve my resident's problem? No, it doesn't. It's a good reason, it's a valid reason, but it doesn't solve the problem. I need to address their issue, not give them reasons on why it didn't happen. So I'm so sorry that we didn't do that. What we should have done in that situation is given you a call and let you know that we needed to reschedule. Now, I'd like to get somebody back as soon as possible. What's a good time that works for you today? So I'm going to ask them what works best for them, and that's my way of saying, how do I make this better for you? And I can even say that too. How do I correct this? Obviously, there's no excuse for us not showing up. How do I make this better for you? Can we show up, in the next hour? Only promise that you're going to show up in the next hour if you know that you can do that. Otherwise, you're not doing what you said you were going to do, which faults the agreement that you're going to enter into. So if they say, yeah, actually today between 4 and 5 works. Perfect. Let me call my maintenance supervisor to make sure that he can get there between 4 and 5 p.m. Can I give you a call right back? They're going to say yes. I'm going to agree. And before I get off the phone, just to recap the conversation, I'm extremely sorry that nobody called you to reschedule your work order. That's unacceptable. We value you as a resident, and I'm sorry that we didn't show you that. So-and-so is going to be over between 4 and 5 p.m. We've got permission to enter. Is there anything else that I can do to help you today? Problem solved. And we de-escalated a situation. We didn't get defensive. We managed our triggers, and now we have a happy resident. Your residents and the people that you work with don't expect you to be perfect. It's how you handle a situation that makes the biggest impact. If you've ever thought about an experience that you have, a customer service experience, we care about customer service a lot, not just because that we're in this industry, but we work hard for our money. Like, I make choices and sacrifices to be at work, and what represents those choices and sacrifices to me is my direct deposit that I get every other week, right? So when I go to spend my choices and sacrifices with you, maybe it's housing, maybe it's at a restaurant, maybe it's with your product or service, maybe it's with your management company, I expect those to be respected. And when I feel like they're not, I feel some type of way about that, right? That's what we want to get to the core of, is that value that needs to be protected and that needs to be honored. So we want to look beyond the actual incident, and it's not it's not the fact that it was violated in the first place, but it's how you handle it. How many people will you do business with again because they corrected a mistake right the first time, or they owned their part, or someone that you will always do business with again because you had a major issue and they're the ones that went out of their way to make it better for you. I'm sure you've even been on vacation where maybe there's something wrong with your hotel room or an excursion or part of your trip, but someone went out of their way to give you 5-star customer service, and you'll probably always go back. That's what we're doing here. We're giving 5-star customer service so they'll be a customer for life. That is the goal, right? And it's got nothing to do with my team not being good enough or my feelings being better than your feelings. It's about earning the business and the trust for life. And that, again, that's the big win here. So let's take a look at a pre-planned conflict situation. So again, I'll read the case study to you and then we'll talk about how to handle it. So your supervisor, you're totally going to relate to this. Your supervisor has set some pretty unrealistic expectations regarding some upcoming goals. You're concerned because you haven't had the training or the experience you need to accomplish the goals, and there's other priorities that need your attention. Sound familiar? You don't want to look bad in front of your supervisor by saying that you can't do it, but now you're really anxious and stressed. Your supervisor doesn't seem to realize how much is on your plate, and it feels like they're just barking orders at you. How do we resolve the conflict? So this is a really tricky one, and I'm sure that, again, you can relate. And no, the answer is not quit your job to avoid having a conversation. You have to be able to communicate with your supervisor the fact that you are overwhelmed and stressed, because your supervisors and those you work with, they're not mind readers. We do have a responsibility to communicate. Your supervisors, they've got this mentality you don't get if you don't ask. Of course, they're going to ask you to do this, that, and the other thing. If you keep saying yes, they've got no reason to believe that you can't handle it. So we do want to guard our yes. We do want to give no power, and we do want to communicate when there are other priorities. Perhaps your supervisor is stressed themselves based on other expectations that you might not be aware of. So what this sounds like to me is a classic case of miscommunication. So what we want to do is we first want to clarify the problem. Let's give your supervisor a call and say, hey, I know that you've just asked me to do these extra duties. I want to talk to you a little bit about priorities and what I've got going on. Do you have time to either meet with me or chat with me a little bit later this week so I can bring this to your attention? Like, let's set some time aside to have a pre-planned conversation. Then we're going to talk about everything that's on our plate. Don't assume that your supervisor always knows, especially if you're on site and they're not. There is some disconnection that happens. Maybe you're the one off site talking to somebody on site. Don't assume you know everything that they got going on, especially when you've been out the game for a little bit. Sometimes we forget all of the day-to-day responsibilities that our site team members, our street team have going on. So let's talk about it. Let's identify what it is that we feel is a priority. Then let's check it from your supervisor's perspective. What we're going to do in this situation is agree on what the priorities are. They might not necessarily be where you think they should be, but perhaps your supervisor, your portfolio manager, if you work on site, is feeling the heat from the client and they need you to shift priorities a little bit. That's okay. We can be a little bit flexible. If you need training in order to get something done, don't be afraid to raise your hand. You're not perfect and you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. Raising your hand is actually a sign of courage, not defeat. You're allowed to ask for help. And in fact, that is a positive thing to do because, again, people don't know where you need support unless you tell them where you need support. That's how we all grow and learn and develop, is when we can identify areas that we can also support each other. Then we're going to agree on what the priorities now are. And maybe we need to change deadlines a little bit. I remember when I was working on site, at one time I managed 4 properties by myself and they were affordable. So we had lots of different things and paperwork and admin duties going on. There was a period of time where I was so overwhelmed I didn't even know where to spend my time or what to do. So I called my portfolio manager and said, look, I can't get everything done. I'm only one person. Here's what I feel like the priorities are. Can you either agree with me or tell me what you would like me to get done and when we can get them done? Because I want to make sure that you and I are on the same page and not make assumptions. Because if I decide that I need more time and didn't tell anyone, now I'm just turning things in late. So we want to agree on how to move forward so everybody is clear. As you can see, there's a common theme of being transparent and having clear communication. That's going to solve half of your conflict right there. It's just by being open. But again, don't be afraid to raise your hand, ask for an extension, ask for the things that you need. That is so important to be able to say that. It helps with your self-regulation, to manage your triggers, to manage your emotions when you can say, I need this. This is what I need. You can be a little bit selfish if it helps you perform and be productive and move progressively toward, again, shared purpose and common goals. At the end of the day, as we are working through conflict, know that you are dealing with other people's feelings. And you can't take back the way that you make other people feel. You get one shot. You can apologize for it. You can work with them on it, but you can't ever take it back. Exercise care and diligence when you're having conversations. Your communication, which you contribute into your work environment with other people, is representative of who you are and whether or not people want to do work with you. Are you the type of person when you walk in the room, does the room get quiet? Are you approachable? Are you flexible? Are you open to new ideas? Are you willing to listen? A lot of that is going to start with an internal look on how you communicate at the basic level. A lot of these other techniques will fall into place if you are genuine and you are authentic about how you show up into a room. Are you present? Are you engaged? Do you want to work towards positive, productive communications and conversations? So great place to start, and then implementing all of these tools. I know you'll be successful in having some of these crucial conversations that are going to take your teams from good to great and then excellent, and then set the standard for how you operate smoothly and cohesively as a team. So I am so excited for you to go and have these amazing conversations. You don't have to be scared of conflict anymore, and we're going to navigate them. And thank you so much for your time and joining me for communication and conflict resolution. We'll see you next time.
If you found this clip useful, please remember to like and subscribe for more. You can also visit us at multifamilystudios.com to view full episodes of our latest and greatest shows and interviews.